I'm here with Sydney Amanuel. I'm saying that right, right?
Yes,
Yes. The
yes.
production designer for the horror fantasy short film CRAM. I am so happy to be interviewing you. I've got a lot of questions. I'm really excited to get some answers. So CRAM was a short film that just never disappointed when it came to visually compelling scenes and sets. What was your favorite scene to bring to life, if you
Ooh,
have a
that's a good
favorite?
question. Yeah. I think I'm gonna say two. I'm just already like not answering the way you want me to, but two scenes were my
Okay.
favorites. Def Definitely the bird scene, which was like such a fun prop to build. So I think that's my favorite for like the long term, like when we create something, it takes like a really long time to build it, and then you finally get to see it in action in a scene. Like that's really cool. So definitely the bird, and then also the party montage was really fun because AB and I played a lot with surrealism of like this real aspect of like a frat party, a college party mixed with this like darker, we always said like sort of like Twin Peaks or like surrealism
Mm.
of this like the strangeness of this party and why this party exists in this like other world that's not this real world. So I think that was a lot of fun too. Plus, I got to decorate for a party, so that's always fun.
Yeah, the surrealism, it definitely translated. Like watching that scene, it felt real, but in a sense, very uncomfortable. Also, because of the cinematography, it's all shaky and unbalanced and stuff. It's just like I'm feeling super uncomfortable right now. Like I'm not supposed to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved like totally not my department, but the script is also great. The dialogue is weird. The dialogue's
Oh, yeah.
uncomfortable, So yeah, totally agree.
Oh my gosh, definitely. Um, so not only were you the production designer for Cram, you're also credited as a composer. I would love to learn more about your role there.
Yeah, yeah, I feel really lucky to have friends that support me in all my artistic endeavors. And AB and Felix, when they found out that I was putting out an album, were like full supporters from the jump. Were really excited for me. Um, and this was like totally separate from the film. They just liked my music, and then it became um, sort of this conversation about would I want to use my music in the film? And I was like, yeah, of course, but does it fit? This film is such an entity of its own, but we found these really fun ways to incorporate, AB likes to call it like sad girl rock, which is my kind of genre, I guess. But we found these fun ways to incorporate it into the soundtrack, alongside like the composer for the film who wrote beautiful scores. But yeah, I feel lucky that they incorporated my band, which is called the People Person, to have sort of some like Easter egg moments in like the party scene and like other beats where it's ambiance, but if you listen closely, like the lyricism as well kind of plays into the scenes and the moments. So it was cool to see that.
Yeah, no, I definitely noticed the music during the party scene. I was like, this sounds so legit right now. I really liked it. It was perfect.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah,
I'm
so it was a
assuming you're
lot
on
of fun. And
Spotify,
yeah,
right?
I'm on Spotify, I'm
Okay.
on iTunes, YouTube, and then I also gonna plug myself. I directed and created a music video for one of my songs for the single when it came out.
Wow.
That I fully like production designed. It's all miniature sets, so that was a lot of fun. So if people are
Yeah.
into that, yeah, it's called A People Person, and the album is self-titled, also called A People Person, so people can check it out on their own.
Okay. No, I'm definitely gonna check that out. That sounds pretty awesome.
I hope you like
Congratulations.
it.
That's
Well,
amazing.
thank you, Riley.
So another thing on just amazing sets, all that stuff. So the huge painting of the old man in the suit, like in the library, fantastic addition. Especially the frown turning to a smile. It was so subtle and so creepy. So was that a painting that was like found in the library, or did you find it somewhere else or create it?
So this is really interesting. So the way that the film was shot, because of the pandemic, the huge pandemic that happened,
Yeah.
there was such a weird time in the film industry, and AB had started this movie pre-pandemic, obviously having no idea what was to come. So I was not part of the library, because I just wasn't signed on to the film at that time. I came on later in the film, post like we were already in pandemic, and AB reached out about picking back up because they still had like half the film to shoot and all these props to create. So when he started it, he wasn't so much focused on the design from like my perspective. He didn't need like the bird prop. He didn't need the party scenes. He already had his vision. And I'm grateful for him that he's so thorough with his vision, because I love
Yeah.
the library and I love the juxtaposition that came out of that, because we did film it almost in like two halves, and the film really does feel like two halves. It's like the two worlds that were created. But yeah, I wasn't part of the library. That was pretty much all AV. But
Wow.
I do love the incorporation of the lighting in the library. The photo, like the framed painting is beautiful. The decor on the tables that he did, like everything he did is so fantastic. So hats off to him, but I can't take any credit.
Oh, okay. No, yeah, that's pretty cool. So did you find it like, was it difficult then to make the two halves kind of come together?
Yeah, I had never done a project like that, not being
Yeah.
on from the start of it, from the conception of it. Um, and usually when I join a project, I see the full script and I have many conversations with the director and cinematographer about everything from start to finish. So yeah, coming in to like the second half, I was definitely intimidated. I was like, wow, okay, there's already sort of a style created and there's already this design that exists in the world. How do I replicate it? How do I incorporate it? But we had so many conversations where AB was really like, I want it to feel so different. I want there to be similarities that we can talk about, in terms of like color and tone and lighting, which we accomplished. But like his plan was the only connection really, I guess, is the library to the final scene of the film where they're
Yeah.
taking the test, because those two worlds exist in the same universe, sort of. There's a lot of like dark woods and really like dim lighting, but for like the party scene, for the factory that plays on the TV, all these sort of like separate builds that I did, he really wanted it to feel out of place in that world. So
Okay.
I think it was a challenge, but it was also really exciting for me to like see almost finished first half of something and then be able to add on to it. Like it was a really cool feeling for me to
Yeah.
because I don't know, when you start a film, you're starting from scratch. There's like nothing to
Yeah.
go off of. But here he handed me almost like a little package, with a bow on it. And I was like, "Ooh, look at that. Wow, I get to like put the cherry on the sundae of this project." So, yeah, it was definitely a challenge, but I would do it again. If offered, I would do it again because it was a lot of fun.
Okay. Yeah, that's not something you usually hear with production designers because you're pretty much in charge of like creating the style just from the very beginning. That would definitely stress a lot of people out to come on at this stage of filming. You did a fantastic job.
Thank you. Yeah, luckily, like the whole team was so close that there was no, dumb question. Everybody is so open to collaboration on that
Perfect.
crew. So it was really good vibes.
Okay, yeah. Well, that makes everything, really. You can
Yeah.
tell that everyone worked together well. So in the party scene, I really liked and I immediately noticed, like, because I've seen it a couple times, but upon first watch, um, the large amount of just small mirrors on the wall. I thought that was so cool. It gave off this really layered and fractured look. So I want to know more about like what your intention was when making that. If you had first thought about it like a long time ago before you even started putting it together. Or...
Yeah, it was like a serendipitous thing. We filmed at this gorgeous house um, in Connecticut, and it had so much to play with for like texture and design. And when you're on a low budget project, you wish you could put in marble countertops and you wish you could add all these like
Of
amazing
course.
archways, and this house like had so much of that already that we were able to manipulate to what we wanted. So they had like a ton of mirrors, and at first I usually in film, because of camera department, you see a ton of mirrors and it's like nightmare.
Yeah.
Like take the mirrors off, like take every mirror off, cover them up, spray them, dull them. But we sat there for a while thinking about it, and we were like, they're so beautiful. What if we really incorporated them, and what if we like made it a whole play, a whole scene of having them in the mirrors, and like they end up at certain spots in the mirrors. And it was a great idea, and we were all on board, and then we had to execute it and figure out like where to put the mirrors and how to make the actors end up where we want them and the camera move. So it started off like very creative, and then it became very technical very fast. And
Yeah.
I'm sure at some point everyone was like, "Ah, I wish we never did the mirrors." But I love the way it came out. And I agree. Yeah, we that was definitely the idea, was this like fractured, but also like, what are we focus like, where's the focus? This party's like chaotic, there's like so much movement happening and these mirrors are jarring and disorienting. So if that was like the vibe people got, perfect and amazing. I
It
also just
was.
love Oh, great. Okay, nailed it. I also just loved the look of the mirrors, the antiqueness, and
Mm.
we were playing it as this old sort of fraternity house, but like really nice, like way nicer than any frat house I've ever seen. So it was sort of like this old money thing. And yeah, I really liked the mirrors. I'm glad we got to incorporate them. And I'm glad you enjoyed in that moment as
Yeah.
well.
No, that's funny that you mentioned the old money type thing because I was noticing on a different wall later on just like a ton of, I think it was tennis rackets or something. And I was
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's about right. That
Yep.
fits. So I'd love to learn about the creation of that old black and white movie that we had already talked a little bit about. So the mechanical gears and everything, they looked super great, like theatrical, dreamlike, all that stuff. How did you go about creating that machine?
It was hilarious. It that came This movie again was like shot in so many different sections. So we shot everything in Connecticut, in the house, and then we went to Staten Island and we shot in a church that became the school. And the final exam scene and everything, we had to basically hide that it was a church and create this whole school with tables and chairs, and it was a lot. And then after that, completely separate, like I think might have been even been like a month or 2 months later, we then jumped to this entirely separate like film within a film, this black and white, um, factory construction sort of unknown. And Abby, myself, Trevor, and I think Felix came too. We all went to junkyards in New York City and just looked for random things. Like it was in, I think it must have been February. There was snow on the ground. We were like trekking around and like finding gears and pipes and like talking to each other about what we think would look good. And we got a bunch of really fun pieces, but then it also had to be practical. We were building this in actually Felix's apartment. Um,
Oh,
yeah, so this was like maybe the most low budget part of the whole film. It was just this like end beat. We had to get it done. Um, and I was like, okay, these gears are great. All these metal objects are great, but they're very heavy. They're real metal. We don't really have ways of attaching them to the walls, and we can't ruin Felix's apartment. So then it became the creative building side where I then started to sketch out this basic framework of what the factory would look like. I got a bunch of PVC piping, um, found some, bought some. It was very like piecemeal, spray painted it. And this is now like at my apartment, I'm like half building it there, going up on my roof of my New York City apartment, like spray painting on my roof because I have nowhere to do it, coming back downstairs, like reconnecting it in my bedroom. It like ran from my bedroom into the hallway because I had no space. And I
oh,
was like putting all these pipes together, and then it became an even more fun thing of how do I make the gears not heavy, look, theatrical, actually spin. So I ended up using styrofoam for a lot of the gears and basically made giant stencils and then cut them out of styrofoam with like foam cutters and stuff. Spray painted those and then attached them with nuts and bolts to the pipes. And for the, oh gosh, it's so long ago, for the crank, we had like a real crank arm, and then I made a belt. I'm pretty sure it was out of tape. I like made it out of tape and cut out each sprocket to fit the fake gear that I made. It was
whoa.
it was many trips to the hardware store. I'm a production designer, but like my background isn't in drafting, so
Yeah.
I definitely learned a lot from this build. So then it was like I deconstructed the whole thing, Ubered it over to Felix's apartment, and then we rebuilt it together. And I think the most fun part was I had a fog machine and we had little sections where we would pump the fog
Oh.
through the piping, and it would like come out of certain areas of the pipe, and we had holes in the pipes. So it was very theatrical, and we kept having a lot of fun with it because it was just like so over the top theater. And here we are filming it for this film, but it was a lot of work, and I really love how it came out.
Oh yeah, it came out great. It worked. It looked so good.
And
That's really
the
impressive.
dog, and the dog too. I mean, I feel like the
Oh
dog
yeah.
made the whole scene.
The
But
star
yeah,
of the
and the funny,
show.
yeah, absolutely. Stole the show in my opinion. But I think the funniest thing too is all that behind the scenes stuff. You know, no one would ever know that that's how it was built or that I
Yeah.
made it and had to build the whole thing. But I think the other fun part, little behind the scenes secret was I think the tape belt itself that ran through the crank of it was bright pink tape, and you would never know
Hmm.
because we shot it in black and white. So a lot of the things were very colored, but because we chose colors because it's very contrasty in black and white. So
Yeah.
things were like tape was like neon green, but then it just looks like a shade of white on camera and stuff. So that was a lot of fun too. So the BTS photos look ridiculous. It's just like purple tape and pink tape and green tape, and then on camera it obviously doesn't look like that at all. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
That's so interesting. And then with that too, the TV that it plays on, it was
Yeah.
super, super cool, like historic creepiness in there. So how'd you come across that TV?
So that TV was oh gosh, rented or borrowed, I believe. I don't want to misspeak, but I feel like Zach, who's an amazing producer, and he had a connect, I think, to a theater in Connecticut and had a friend who had a lot of pieces. And I think, pretty sure that we went through and she sent some pictures and we luckily found that TV. We were looking for it for a
Wow.
while because we were shooting in Connecticut, it was very hard to transport rented items from New York. And I know like a lot of rental shops in New York, but that just like wasn't going to work logistically. So he
Yeah.
kind of saved the day with that find. Um, and then that was obviously we did that in post. So that was, VFX done in post on the TV because we hadn't filmed any of the factory stuff yet. So we were just, filming the TV and we're like, it's gonna look really good, we hope. Um, but
You were
yeah,
right.
that came, yeah, yeah. I hope so. But that came out great. And it was also that was a whole logistical thing with filming this TV that's not actually playing anything yet to try to figure out like lighting, distance of the actor from the TV. We had him on that rug, trying to figure out like I give all the props to, AB and the editors trying to figure out in the moment filming something how it's going to translate to the edit and for post. But I think it came out. I was so excited when I saw that scene. I just thought like it looked so good and they did such a good
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people who aren't really familiar with, the process of making movies would think that, oh, you guys had that playing on the TV screen. Like, of course you did. Because you can't tell, of course. It was
Yeah.
amazing. I loved it. And
Ah,
then
makes
I
me so
have to ask
happy.
more about the scene. There's so much going on. Of course I have to ask
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Um, what did you use to make that black oozing oil type of thing?
So okay, so the really fantastic special effects makeup artist Beatrice who was on it.
Mhm.
She's so cool, she's so rad. I loved working with her. Uh she we basically like worked somewhat together because she had to create this goo in mass for this scene and we also
Yeah.
needed this goo for the bird moment because the bird spits up this like black ichor as well. And when we were building the bird, that was a whole nother thing. But when we were building the bird, we had tubing to like running through it that it would be able to spit through its beak. So we had to make sure, it wasn't too viscous. And this is like so intricate. But she made it, I think it was like part dish soap that gave it sort of this like slimy material.
Mm,
And then there was like a lot of purple shampoo. Us blondes know about purple shampoo to keep your
yeah.
hair non yellow, because it had great coloring to it. So it smelled really good. The goo actually like smelled so fragrant. I would have loved to like use it as a hair mask. Um, and she made it in like three huge bins, and we had to like constantly mix them. And I remember too, when we were filming that scene, poor John, the actor who was such a trooper, uh, the goo was very cold because we were filming in
Ooh.
this house and it was an older house. It was a gorgeous house, but it was older. And I think the goo was like in kind of a cool area. So I had to like put all this goo on poor John and John was like shivering. And I was like
Oh my
I
goodness.
was trying to like warm up the goo and get the goo on him. But we had a few rugs for that scene to prepare because basically
Right.
John is laying like on this rug and goo is getting everywhere. And we were concerned about the homeowner. They have carpeting in that room. So we were like, well, we got to
Oh
protect their
gosh. Yeah.
carpeting. And it's a really wide shot at one point. So we needed a way to make it so that he is, sprawled out, but enclosed in an area that was safe for us to film on. So we had a few rugs to do a few takes. But it was very nerve wracking because once the goo was on, it was over. Like that, it was staining, like it was done.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that goo was very fun, but definitely messy. I remember we had like painters tarps just everywhere in the house because as soon as you stand up too, you're just trekking goo anywhere you go. So it was like anybody touches the goo, like don't touch anything. Uh, but yeah, that was fun. All props to Beatrice on the goo. She really did a great job.
Okay. Yeah, she really did. I loved it. And now I have to ask about the bird. You gotta tell me how you made that thing.
Yes, we call him Goopert is his name on set.
Goopert.
Goopert, because he became covered in goo. Um, the bird was a big effort between notes from Aby, uh, John, who is the engineer for the skeleton of the 3D printing of the bird, like shell, and
Okay.
then I was doing the fabrication of like the bird itself. So basically, it was like a puppet, like an animatronic puppet that John built. It was made of plastic. He sent me like schematics and sizes, and then I sent back sort of my ideas about the shape of it and like how the wings would go. And then he would send back stuff. And we were doing this online, like we, FaceTiming each other. And I would like hold up little pieces and be like, I want it to be more like this. And then, he would send me something back. So it was really fun back and forth. And then finally, I went and picked up the physical pieces from him in Brooklyn, which were like these little plastic wings that sort of snapped in, this skeletal looking head and sort of like a frame of a body. And inside it had these wires and tubing that attached to all the pieces with like a pulley switch. So if you move the pulley one way, it like pulled the head. And if you pulled the
Oh,
second pulley, it pulled the right wing. And if you pulled the third pulley, it pulled the left. So it was a puppet. It was basically like a switchboard
yeah.
puppet. Um, so that was great. And I was like, amazing. And then it became this really difficult and interesting process of making basically skin for it, which I molded in clay to fit the shapes that he created with the skeleton. And I would carve out these, like veins or like other pieces of it that had to be a little more intricate in the clay. Then I painted in liquid latex and like layers of
Mm.
liquid latex, which is flexible because I needed it to have flexibility to be able to like turn the head and like move the wings. It couldn't be plastic or too rigid. And then I would peel out the liquid latex. Then I filled the liquid latex with like a gelatin mixture, to create like a soft body to encase the plastic in,
Yeah.
um, and sort of sealed it up. Then it was like a lot of adjusting and trimming the liquid latex because sometimes I would fit it together, but then it would get stuck or something, or like I couldn't move the head anymore. It'd be an issue. So there was a lot of like intricate cutting and detailing. And then came the fun part of the painting and the feathering, and putting in little eyeballs and like adding all these external details for the bird, little feet. Um, and it's crazy how long things take because in the end product, it's like it's done.
Yeah.
It's that, and it has its like 4 seconds on screen, and then the actor throws it to the ground, and like that's the whole beat. But it was like I want to say probably a month from start to finish of the whole bird itself. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and then a few tests after that too. We had to test that the ichor, would come out of its beak, and how
Yeah.
could we do that multiple times? How can we get multiple takes and make sure that it's not going to get clogged or like mess up the feathering and stuff. So it was definitely one of my more fun builds. Right before it, in a really weird coincidence, I had built a dead baby bird for a completely different project.
Oh.
That was not a puppet. It was just like it had fallen out of a nest, basically. Um, so when AB reached out about this bird, he like mentioned this bird to me. I was like, it's so funny you say that I think I'm becoming this like niche bird prop fabricator. Uh, so yeah, I'm like, hey, if anybody needs a bird prop, I'm apparently your girl.
I guess so.
Yeah, but again, that one was like a huge collaboration with John, who's the engineer, and then of course AB, because AB, we would send him photos of stuff, and he really wanted it to be realistic, and I would send him some clay molds I did, and he's like, oh, I think the belly is too round, or I
Mm,
think like the wings should come down more and be more like it's struggling. It shouldn't be so wide. So there was a lot of
yeah.
adjustments made, and then aside from Goopert, we had Gary, who was uh his prop stunt double bird. So I made two birds, and one was our hero one that looked, good for the scene, and the other was a little messed up. He was like not as good looking. His feathering wasn't so good. He's a little misshapely, but he was the bird we used for when John the actor like throws him on the ground because we didn't want to injure
Yeah.
our main bird, our hero bird. So we had like random little feathers that I made, like wings that I made, and like extra feet that John pulls out of his nose because
Oh, yeah.
in I don't want to give can I give spoilers? Can I like talk about
Yeah,
it?
yeah, go ahead. Go
Oh,
ahead.
okay. Um in the scene, John basically pulls out a full-size bird and it ends up in his hand, but we needed to not have him put a bird up his nose. So I also had to build separate like feet and wings and random pieces of the bird. So all in all, there was like a few pieces made aside from the hero bird prop. And we
Wow.
messed around with that scene too, where he's pulling stuff out. We really wanted to go for like body horror.
Yeah.
So he did he did to his credit have to like stick some pieces into his nose like kind of far and then pull them back out, so that wasn't
What
like
a
a stunt.
trooper.
I know, he really was a trooper. He was so great to work with. But yeah, so there was like a few pieces that ended up making it into it aside from the main bird. So it was definitely
Okay.
a journey.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Oh my gosh. Very intricate. Wow.
Yeah.
So gotta ask about the master of the books, everyone's like favorite character, or at least maybe mine. Maybe it's just me. But I had spoken to AB previously about that, how you guys brought it to life and everything. So incredible. With you being the production designer, though, I would love to know what your initial take was on the look of this character when we were just talking about him beforehand, and then how it translated to the final product.
Yeah. So like I said, like I got this rough cut of the first part of the film with the library, and Master of Books makes an appearance there with his creepy,
His
bony
hands,
finger, and
right? Yeah.
I was so in love with the character off the bat. I thought that the makeup design, again, Beatrice, the makeup design um was so fantastic and creepy, but not unrealistic. It's sort of this like elderly man, but to me, it felt very like boogeyman-esque.
Yeah.
Um, some sort of like creature under your bed. Uh, but I didn't have to change, like, there was nothing for me to change. I didn't have to fix anything. He was already a full creation and fully realized. So to come into it, I was mostly excited just to give him props to work with. Um, and create that final scene, the exam scene, to kind of build out his desk area, um,
Yeah.
and kind of vibe out more who he is, which is Master of Books. It's like, old books and candelabras and
Mm.
apples and, like all these fun things that AB and I would kind of like spitball back and forth. And wardrobe as well, which is Alex Nyman, who did another fantastic job on his, regal robes and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but I think, yeah, from production design perspective, if anything, his character being fully realized and being able to see the costuming and makeup and everything really like motivated me to go in that old world, old money direction for things. He's out of time. He's like this, character out of time. And I had a lot of fun with incorporating those not even hidden, but those elements into like the house party, because it's like, do they exist at this school? Are these,
Yeah.
like students part of this man's like classroom? And little things like the rackets on the wall and this plush leather couch. really fancy dining room where they're playing beer pong, but with, champagne. Like it's just,
Right.
we came up with all these like very odd, like how can we twist sort of this fraternity thing into making it uh this man's world, this man's university. Um, so yeah, I think from that perspective, it sort of shifted in me how I originally was thinking about the general vibe, I guess, of the party scene. The ending, the exam, I always knew that it was his world. I always knew it was this like very dark wood, candles flickering, like it just, I don't want to say like Hogwarts, it's not Hogwarts, but it's
No,
sort of,
I was totally feeling Harry Potter. Okay, I'm so glad
yeah.
you said that.
I feel like it's I don't want to say it's like a cop out because there's so many other references I could make, but it is
Yeah,
the one that I think stands out in a lot of people's minds when they see these like gothic, interiors and stuff like that.
right.
So I definitely also had the same exact like vision in my head. I was like, oh, he's like this creepy professor from Harry Potter. But yeah, he seeing him inspired me in many ways for the remainder of the film.
Yeah. And you said you shot that in a church, right?
Yeah.
So those like those really big tables that people were taking the nonsensical tests on, were those already there? Did you have to go find them somewhere else?
No, those were there. We really like worked so hard to find locations that had a lot of what we needed because of our budget. So when you're already paying, however much for a location, if it can be included, it's like a godsend. No pun intended because we were at a church. But they had these like brilliant old wooden tables that were just used for their like community gatherings and like rec center stuff. It wasn't really you. They had pews. We had to move like the pews and all these other
Yeah.
very obvious religious things. But they had these old tables. They had these old wooden chairs. And when we looked at it, we debated, like the tables were a little narrow. There's always something, like the tables were a little narrow, the chairs were a little this or that. But after discussing it, we were just like, it's perfect. I mean, it's
Yeah.
gonna look great. It's the exact vibe we want. It's the exact look we want. And I think it worked out great. I think AB just posted a clip of it because it premieres today. It's like released today. CRAM is
Yeah.
out. It's Friday, March 17th. And CRAM is out in the world streaming. So he was posting clips of it leading up, and I was just watching a clip of that final scene, and I had the thought, I was like, man, that classroom looks good. Like it's nice to
Yeah.
step away from it and you can like appreciate it more. Because in the moment, oh my gosh, that day was crazy. We were coming off of working in Connecticut. We drove back to New York that day. Like we woke up in Connecticut, drove back to New York all the way to Staten Island, and then
Jeez.
filmed in Staten Island until, I don't even know. It must have been like 3 or 4 a.m. We did like an overnight because we needed night for the shoot. Um, and I was running on like no sleep, coming off of this big shoot and all this prep work I had done. And I just was so worried about this church. I was like, it can't look like a church. Like I have to make it not look, it has to look like this classroom. And it was such a big thing. And then in the end, watching it back, I'm like, ah, it's perfect. I love the way it looks. So it's nice to be separated from it now. I can really appreciate it more.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you're in this religious environment and it just came off looking like straight up academia. That's really
Yeah.
interesting.
There was
Yeah,
a lot of covering up. I mean, there was a huge cross at the altar of the church.
makes
Um,
sense.
yeah, aptly there. I mean, it's there for a reason. Uh, and there was no way to take it down. There's like it is in the foundation of this church. So Alex had created this super huge fabric drapery that she had basically taken her design for the Master of Books's costuming and made it into this almost like a, I don't even know what it, like a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a family crest, almost like a school
Okay.
crest or something. Um, and we had it, and it like kind of just fit. We were making it work, but we had to obviously like climb up these like trestle things to try to hang it, and it had to look good on camera. So everything comes with a challenge. It's like problem solved. Actually, there's a few more steps to solve the problem. New problem. Okay, a few more steps to like officially solve the problem. But yeah, it ended up coming out great. We hid most of the religious iconography with academic stuff, you know, placing books in certain areas to sort of hide it. But this was a conversation we also had with Felix, the DP, about helping art department and making it so that things fell off into darkness in the space.
Yeah.
And we talked a lot about that, which we all ended up loving that idea anyway, because it also makes this space even more unknown. It's like it exists in a void. So there was a lot of conversation about how to almost like it's infinity behind the students when they're sitting at their desks. It's just like this black hole,
Yeah.
which I think we accomplished too, which was cool.
You did. Yeah. Oh my gosh, you did such a good job. And just everybody that worked on CRAM was incredible. Like it came out amazing. I've
Thank
seen a
you.
lot of horror shorts and like, well, this is a little bit longer than ones that I would usually watch, but it just came off like I was so impressed. I don't know. I felt all the effects that I would feel for a feature-length movie. It was great.
Thank you. That means so much. I'm a big fan of horror. I love watching horror and I love
Me
working
too.
on horror. So to have people like it, like if horror lovers enjoy it, that's all I could ever want. You know, I'm like so happy. So thank you, Riley. That means a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. I learned so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's fun to reminisce about it and it's cool. Like I said, like when you're in it working in film, it's so hard to be able to appreciate your work. So it's so nice to have
Yeah.
this like debrief, like talk back, you know, and be able to discuss it because I really am so proud of CRAM and I'm so
Yeah.
proud of everybody who worked on it and the what we've created is like something that I want to show people. I'm so excited it's out now so I can say like, "Oh, you want to know where my work is? You can actually find it. It exists online."
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you for having me. This was great.
Yeah. That's such an artist thing too to not fully appreciate and always be like, oh, I could have done this or that. Like you need somebody to tell you to your face, you did a really good job. That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And honestly, Riley, you're really good at telling me that. So we should hang out in person. You could like tell me, compliment me
I'm
more.
here to make
No,
you feel better. That's what you need, okay?
thank you. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you again. I really enjoyed talking with you. I hope you have fun on set because I know you're working right now. So,
Thank
yeah.
you. Yeah, I'm gonna get back to it after we hang up. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you again. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a
Great
good
talking with you.
day.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.